We're 1 week away from what you worked so hard for.
It's NAIA Football with Dannelly and Donley.
And don't you let a moment go without thinking about what's there for you to reach out and grasp.
Folks, let's welcome in. It is NAIA Football. I'm one half of this show, Dannelly, Jason Dannelly with you, as we take a little bit of time here this week to look through what happened over the weekend in NAIA football and preview some of the upcoming matchups for this coming week. Now, we've got a lot to go over in this show. We're going to take a look at the top 25 in NAIA football, what happened at each one of those teams, their results, then feature some of those games, and then look forward at three key matchups that are happening in NAIA football here in the coming week. Now, you've met me. We kind of did a half show. I like to call it episode 0 last week. Episode 1 is official, and we're thankful for you coming in. But let's talk some NAIA football. Let me introduce my co-host for the evening and for this show. He is a 2-time NAIA National Championship coach. He is a multiple Coordinator of the Year award winner. He's been in NAIA football his entire life. Like, if you talk about people that were like born into the NAIA and have been in the NAIA for their life, he's that guy. And it just so happens that, well, you know, his dad is also the all-time winningest NAIA football coach ever. Pat Donley. Pat, thanks for coming in, buddy.
What an intro. Wow. We got some juice tonight on a Sunday.
I'm actually ready for it this week. Last week, like, we did the episode 0 just to test things out a little bit. And I was like, oh, is this going to work? And how's this? And click this. And then I found out, like, just you and I talking for an hour, that's entertainment enough for me. The people might not think that, but I'm loving it, dude. I'm so happy that we're able to do this. And if anything, it just gives us a chance to catch up on one another's lives and not have to schedule a phone call or anything like that.
No question. This has been it was a blast last week. Looking forward to it all week, and really kind of have some direction of what we're doing here, and have some prep. And had boots on the ground at a great matchup. Myself in Indianapolis this past week, or yesterday, Saturday, and it's have a different perspective. Kind of going there as a fan now doing this. Having an extra interest in the games and the matchups. So I've got to see a couple on film as well, some videos. So really looking forward to this and excited.
Yeah, Marian St. Francis didn't go the way it wanted to if you are a person that has followed St. Francis for most of your life. But Marian just trudging along, getting those wins, sometimes ugly wins, but wins nonetheless. And as we know, this stage of the game in the NAIA football, that's what you got to do. Keep winning, survive in advance this time of year. And there's a couple teams this week that certainly did not do that. One being the opponent that Marian had last week, Concordia. They had a chance to bounce back this week, and they lost one to Siena Heights.
Yeah, you wonder if, kind of the tight loss. It was a good game last week against Marian, a game that was a one-score game and a loss. That you have that hangover for the next week. And again, another rivalry game for Concordia. Those schools are separated by about 45 minutes apart, same recruiting base. Siena Heights, they're always a tough opponent, Jason. I know that's a program that's never been in the NAIA playoffs, but they're always right there. They have talented players. Their defensive of approach and what they do and the culture they have with their defense there is really second to none in the NAIA. I mean, just tremendous players. Seeing that score was, I wouldn't say it was surprising, but certainly something you want to take a look at and dig a little bit deeper of the details. That's a huge win for Siena Heights, and again, you tip your cap to those guys.
We'll review that game in just a little bit. We'll have the stats for it. Same game, different conference. We go to the Frontier, and you've got Montana Tech getting knocked off by Rocky Mountain. And Rocky Mountain, like Siena Heights, not a team that you see in the NAIA postseason. Solid team. They were at home, and they were able to knock off a very tough Montana Tech team who earlier this year knocked off Division II Central Washington. So all sorts of things up in the air in the Frontier Conference. We'll also get to that big game, obviously, between Carroll College and College of Idaho. So there's a ton of great matchups and a lot of upsets in the top 25. I guess that gives us an opportunity to, well, we might as well jump into it and take a look at that top 25, Pat. And just the first five, really no surprise here from what we saw.
No question. And you look at Northwestern, we know what's looming next week. The great rivalry game, two of the perennial powers now in the NAIA. That's a tough game. You as a coach, you take that approach. Like you've got a quality opponent coming in with Dort if you're Northwestern, but you're always thinking about Morningside the week after. So I give kudos to that staff to really get their players prepared and focused on the week at hand. Big win against Dort there, 35-14, looking into, now the huge matchup next Saturday.
Yeah, and Morningside, some struggles this week with Jamestown. We'll get into that a little bit. At one point late in the game, Jamestown led that football game 29-24 before Morningside made some adjustments and proved they were the better team. It definitely was a game, though, where there's some question marks as you started getting later in the game. Like, is this going to be the biggest upset we've seen in the NAI for a while? It wasn't, but kudos to Jamestown coming into that game, being prepared. And then we'll talk more about Marian St. Francis here in a bit. You were obviously at that game. Indiana Wesleyan Idle, the second half of the top 10. Kaiser defeats Southeastern 51-21. That game was not as close as it looked, as Kaiser was actually up in that game 48-0 before Southeastern came back, added a couple scores late in the game. Carroll College obviously losing College of Idaho. Lindsey Wilson getting a win, setting up for a big matchup this week against Georgetown. And then you've got College of Idaho defeating Carroll. They've got Eastern Oregon and then that other top 10. So, it's we knew somebody in the top 10 was going to lose between obviously Carroll and College of Idaho, but everything else pretty much going to chalk.
Yeah, it seemed that way for sure. Again, you see these next 2 weeks. So this past Saturday and next Saturday, the rivalry games, the ones those games that make or break those conference champions are happening. So, there's some exciting games. And again, we're looking right into next week as well for some other big matchups.
11 through 15, this is where things got interesting. And I should note, for anybody looking at this going, you got them rated wrong. They're 10 and they're 9. This is the Victory Sports Network top 25. So we're going through. Matters. Obviously, it's the unbiased. I'm not voting for the best team in my conference just because I want to boost. This is where they should be. I've said that for years. I'm the most unbiased rater in all of the NAIA. Also because my alma mater doesn't even exist in the NAIA anymore. Or I guess in real life, they're gone. They're closed. So I don't even have a bias towards them that I could do.
R.I.P. Dana.
Can only do so much.
I know, buddy.
Anyway, so 11 through 15 is where it got interesting. Number 12 loss, number 13 loss, and number 15 loss. We'll look into those games a little bit more thoroughly here. The Southwestern loss to Bethel was surprising. Southwestern loses to Friends last week. They get an opportunity this week to bounce back. Bethel, another strong running team, and they kept it on the ground and put it to the Mound Builders to get that 20-13 victory. Evangel going up against that Friends team that knocked off Southwestern last week. Guess what? They prevail. They were actually up in this game at 1 point, 20-3, kind of a late score to get things close in that ball game. We'll get through the rest of the top 25 here. So 16 through 20, Pat. St. Xavier, they sit idle, which there's some interesting things going on in that conference that we can talk about. Texas Wesleyan gets a W over Wayland Baptist, a little closer than what I thought that'd be. Benedictine gets a win. St. Thomas blows the doors off of Ave Maria, and Dickinson sitting idle. Dickinson, I did set an over-under on Twitter of 52.5, that being the total number of pheasant shot this weekend by the guys out at Dickinson State. If you know, I don't know if you guys ever played Dickinson or have been through Dickinson, North Dakota, but let's just say hunting is a way of life in Western North Dakota.
We've been through both Dakotas in my time, and the pheasant culture, it's so cool, first off. And absolutely, without question, on the bye week, you're getting the dogs going and blowing some pheasant away for sure if you're those guys. I love eating. Have you ever had pheasant, Jay? It's great.
Oh yeah.
So you're up there now, yeah.
honestly, if we go, let's go into the Wayback Machine. Let's annoy everybody when we talk about back in the day. But back when Pat and I,
talking about the old
yeah,
days.
exactly. Back in the day, I don't know if you remember this. It was NAIA Coaches Convention in Dallas, and you and I, we were eating at the hotel the entire time, and we both looked at one another like, I got to get something else. Like, I can only have what's at this hotel so often. And you and I went to, I can't remember the name of the cafe, but they had gator sausage, they had pheasant. I think they had like ostrich sausages. Yeah.
YO Ranch.
Yes.
No,
it was the YO.
No plugs. You know, we're not advertising for this restaurant in downtown Dallas. Not that anybody from that restaurant would goes to that restaurant would probably be on this, but it's a fantastic place.
Yes.
Cool decor, the whole 9 yards. Yeah. And exotic meats, which guys like you and I, that's right up our alley, right?
Yeah, exactly.
My sister lives in Dallas now, so we've actually been back.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's cool, man.
Oh,
gator
I love that
sausage. Yeah,
yeah.
I think I had a elk steak, maybe elk steak.
Yep.
Or folks,
elk steak.
Pioneer folks out there, they probably it's like standard fare for them. But yeah, a guy that lives in Indiana, it's kind of unique for me. So
yeah, no, I would absolutely agree.
I remember we were there together. That's right.
Yep. I just remembered you and I talking to one another, going, we need to go someplace else to eat. Yeah. I'm done with this.
Yeah.
I mentioned St. Xavier there in the top 25, and they've got Ambrose this week. No offense to Ambrose. They're not the Ambrose of old. That should be a W for Xavier. Then Xavier's got Olivet Nazarene before finishing up against Roosevelt. And Roosevelt right now in that half of the Mid-States Football Association is undefeated. They're not rated because they've lost 3 other games. They lost to Bethel. They had a few other losses throughout the year. But if we go into the final week of the year and neither of those teams lose a game, the winner of that game will actually end up being the Mid-States Football Association Midwest champion and get the automatic. So if Xavier stays around this 16-14 range for their rating and they don't move up and they lose that last game, they'll end up not being in the postseason this year.
I've seen St. X play in person against St. Francis early in the year. I think they're a really good football team, talented, well coached. One of their losses is to a GLIAC school, I believe. I think it was at Saginaw, maybe.
Yeah, Saginaw last week.
Yep. So that's one of their losses. That's a pretty darn good program in the GLIAC conference. If those that are familiar with that, it's a very, very strong Division II conference. So I look at they're a 2-loss team when you look at the playoff situation. And yeah, it's always a good game. Them and Roosevelt, that western side. That's that matchup here in a couple of weeks is obviously very, very big. But I watching St. Xavier, to me, they're a playoff team. Just watching them in person, like they're a good football team, and I'll be anxious to see how that all shakes out in the next few weeks.
Last 5, I should say, of the top 25, Reinhardt gets the easy win over Point. Dort lost to Northwestern. Ottawa, Louisiana Christian. We'll get into that game in a little bit. Well-fought matchup out in the desert and surprise Arizona between those two. Louisiana Christian, I watched the first half of that game live last night and then watched a replay this morning. They've got a nice team. They really have a nice team. I like the way their offense works. They didn't make a lot of mistakes in that game, but that Ottawa-Arizona defense is a swarming defense, and they did have some issues with that. A couple other interesting wins from the NAIA this week. Kentucky Christian got their first win of the year over St. Andrews. St. Andrews still winless. Briar Cliff now 3-5 after beating Dakota Wesleyan. And we talked about Dakota Wesleyan last week. They came into their game against Morningside with only 1 loss. They'd lost to Hastings College earlier in the year. That 1 loss going into Morningside thinking maybe there's a chance. Well, Morningside beats them, so they come this week. I'm thinking Dakota Wesleyan's winning out. They lose to Briar Cliff. So a great win by the Chargers there. In Pikeville at 5-3 after defeating Bluefield, kind of getting into that secondary position in the Appalachian Athletic Conference. They stand a chance potentially to grab a postseason berth there. So that gets us into the fun stuff here now. I better hold on to my mouse. I'll show you my mouse pad. You'll appreciate this.
Oh yeah.
It's the Fight Club DVD that was next to me. Again, us old people in our media.
The guys that grew up in the 90s. It's so long ago now. It doesn't seem long to me, but it's so crazy how that's the old days now, right?
Yeah, way back in the day. All right, so let's take a look at this game. You watched some of this game today. College of Idaho ends out with a 35-21 victory. Really kind of a tight matchup through 2.5 quarters, I would say. Last part of the third quarter, College of Idaho started to pull away. You thought Carroll might get an opportunity in the fourth quarter, but Andy Peters just really took over in this game. And, man, he's one of the best ball players in the NAI. That goes without saying.
Totally agree. Very, very impressed. First off, with both teams. I'm an offensive guy, Jay. I love watching offensive football. I think both of these teams are incredibly efficient, sound in what they do, great run game from spread formations, being the shotgun and running the football very efficiently. Have a couple different approaches in how they go about it. Carroll College is a big RPO team, so it seems like all their run game scheme has a pass game element. If defenders get too aggressive, they run that very, very well. And then with College of Idaho, Peters is the main rusher. I mean, he is a huge, huge part of everything they do. Obviously, throwing the football, you see 278 yards, incredibly efficient throwing the ball, but he's a great runner. I mean, he is a huge part of what they do in running the football. I mean, he is the game plan. So, Boise State transfer, I think he is a tremendous player, one of the best I've seen in the NAI in a long time. Does it all very, very well. They're fun to watch.
Yeah, College of Idaho, a lot of fun to watch. Well coached. Love their scheme. I'm like you. I really like the way that this team looked yesterday. And earlier slip up in the conference, but if they win out, I think they're going to be sitting, really good as we look at what maybe some of the pairings could be in the NAIA Championship Series. There was a moment in that game, second quarter, where Peters went down, injury went out. You're kind of thinking, oh boy, this could be the turning point of the game. What's College of Idaho going to do? He came back the next play.
Right.
So
tough guy. It's one of those things, what they do with him and the expectation of what they need of him, there's a lot of risk there. There's no doubt. And, I don't know what their backup situation truly is. But man, he is that program, and he's a good football player and fun to watch. And it's going to be exciting to see them, hopefully get in the postseason and see what happens. Cause I think they are a good football team, and Carroll College is too, Jay. It's great to see them back playing well. Again, I have nightmares because of playing there over the years. Again, going back in history. But what a beautiful! First off, everyone's in shorts out in Montana yesterday. It must have been a gorgeous day, bright, sunny day in the Big Sky area. What a gorgeous backdrop! It is beautiful, even though we're 0-2 in my coaching career there. But what a beautiful place, and what a great place for a game, and two good football teams. I really enjoyed watching this game. It's one of those games that we've been out there a few times. I know over the years. I know you've probably been there more than I have. I think.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't even know if I could remember the number of times I've been to Helena for a game. I mean, probably from 2003 to 2011, it was minimum once a year. Sometimes also for a postseason game. So, and then I've actually, in my current job, been out through Helena, been out that direction. It's just beautiful countryside. Great place to be.
It really is. If you've never been there, folks listening to this, you got to see that part of the world. Montana, Pacific Northwest, heading that direction. It's just unbelievable, just gorgeous. Yeah, what a place to. I have bad memories of games lost, but what a cool experience being there, flying into that gorgeous part of the world. And I think it's the best stadium in NAIA. That's just my opinion. Great game day atmosphere, and you could see it. You could see that buzz back at Carroll College, and that's great for the NAIA to see. And what a great football game.
Yeah, we love that one. Always fun to see something like that happening. In the Frontier Conference, the conference that is very tough. I did hear reference to them being the SEC of the NAI yesterday. That moderately annoyed me because let's not make that comparison.
I think there's parity, though. There is parity. There's a lot of quality.
Parity.
You can see it. There's no question.
Exactly.
Like Montana Tech, and there's some good football teams out there. And I'm sure there's fights every single week. There's tight football games. So again, you see that parity. But the SEC, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, that's a bit of a stretch. Heading out into the desert, we had Ottawa in Surprise, Arizona, playing host to Louisiana Christian. Louisiana Christian, previously unbeaten. They have their first loss of the season against the Spirit. I watched this game. Ottawa's defense really swarming all over the place. Lots of pressure on Louisiana Christian the entire game. Louisiana Christian was able to counter that. They run a little triple option, a little spread option, a little RPO, like you say. and they were able to, get by some blitzes, get some big plays, and they're able to show a little bit with their offense, but they just weren't able to, pull things off there in the fourth quarter to get this W. But Louisiana Christian, you think about where that program was in Division III, really at the bottom of Division III, and since coming to the NAIA and wanting to, put a staple on their football program. It's a much improved program. Drew Maddox has done one heck of a job getting Louisiana Christian going. It'll be interesting to see now how things play out for them over these next couple weeks and how they finish up. Still, maybe an outside shot at the postseason. They got to have some things fall their way, and they've got to have some things, maybe not go the way for some of their opponents. But nothing to bat your eye at. I do think, had they not lost, they'd get back into the top 25, but by the end of the year, if they take care of business, they're definitely top 25 at AI program.
Yeah, you think about that area and the type of football players that they have in that area. You have a scholarship school, since they transitioned from Division III, which is non-scholarship, into NAI. I mean, that's a gold mine there from a recruiting standpoint. So you can see the turnaround, like you've mentioned, from the Division III level to the NAI level.
And the other thing I like about Louisiana Christian, what they've got going on down there, they're in a conference. They get to travel. They get to see different parts of the country. That's one thing about some of these conferences. Like, I'll take myself, having played in the NIAC, which is now the GPAC. It's like, oh, fun. We get to go to Hastings. We get to go to Lincoln. We get to go to Mitchell, South Dakota. Like, we're not seeing the country. Like Louisiana Christian, they're playing in Oklahoma, they're playing in Arizona, they're playing in Texas. If you play for that program, you get to go a lot of places, and you also better hope that you enjoy traveling as well.
That's a lot of fun. I agree with you, Jay. I mean, the thing, coaching the NAI, like you said, you have the regional matchups to your conference and things of that nature, and coaching the Mid-States Football Association the way I did. The only time we really got out was the non-conference schedule or the playoffs, and going to Carroll College a couple times. We went to Jamestown one time. That was really cool back in 2017 to open the season. Did a 2-day trip. And we actually, that's when we saw each other, I believe, Dave.
Yep.
Like we've been in person. So, yeah, you got to do those things. And that's part of, college athletics experiences. Obviously, you want to play good football and make things as easy for your athletic department's budget and things like that. But if you can, venture out a little bit and see some things, I think it's great. And this conference, having more travel than most, really any NAIA conference, presents some challenges. What a cool experience for those players. I agree with you. That's awesome.
Speaking of travel, Evangel goes from traveling in the Hart Conference every year to now traveling in the KCAC. They hosted Friends this week, top 25 matchup. Friends had knocked off Southwestern. They were starting to roll. You were thinking, if they get a couple wins here, this is a team that we could see in the NAIA postseason. As Corso says, not so fast, my friends. Evangel ends up getting this win, 20-11. Key statistic, Cavante Baker, 0 for 1 passing, no receivers, no receptions, nothing. I don't know if I can remember a game, Pat, and maybe you can think into your coaching history where a team only threw the ball once.
I think my middle school team in 1994. I'm serious. Like, I can't think of one. I mean, that's the sad thing is the guy can throw it. We saw Baker last week and be pretty efficient throwing the football. So, yeah, triple option offense, and I'm a passing game guy, Jay. That might put me to sleep not seeing the ball in the air. The option game is fun to see, but yeah, it's definitely unique in its own right for sure. But yeah, I've never seen that a team not completing a pass. I've never seen that.
And Evangel is a team that likes to run the football as well. They're a team that has a very strong ground game. They were able to air it out in this game, as you can see, to get a couple touchdowns through the air, get that advantage, and ultimately, the Achilles heel to any rushing team out there is if you turn the football over, it's not going to go well for you. Guess what? Evangel was able to force 5 turnovers in this football game. And for Friends to only lose this game by 9 with 5 fumbles, all lost, that's a miracle in and of itself. Evangel doing everything that they needed to do to hold on to this one and maintain control of their half of the KCAC conference.
Yeah, with Friends' system, you can't get behind. They were down 10 points, and it says it's 10 points. But when you're an offense, it doesn't throw the football. I mean, you're banking on everything being tight, and you have control of the game and playing with a lead. You almost have to with that system. So challenging.
The one thing, too, that I will point out We talk a lot about Friends because we talked about them last week. We haven't talked a lot about Evangel, and not a lot of people have this year. But here's a team that's now creeping up towards the top 10 of the NAIA. The way that their schedule's working out, this is a team that could be undefeated going into the postseason. So it could be very interesting seeing the Valor back in the postseason. It's been a while since we've seen Evangel playing in the NAIA Championship Series. Onward to the game that you were at. University of St. Francis traveling down to Indianapolis, playing number 5 Marian. Marian pulling this one out 24-14. You were there, Pat. Tell us about it.
Yeah, mistakes. The team that was going to make the least amount of mistakes was going to be successful, and that was Marian. I'll say this. I thought the game was horribly officiated, both sides. I've never seen more pass interference calls in my entire life. It's unbelievable.
Oh, really?
And I'm a passing game guy, but I'm one of those people. It's like, DBs have to be physical to some level. There has to be, you're playing man-to-man coverage. There's going to be some combat there. There just is. And it seemed like both sides were getting called, the pass interference calls, extending drives that should have been stopped by defenses. So it was a weird game in that regard. Some undisciplined things that the Cougars did, St. Francis, with some personal fouls, things of that nature. Just kind of a sloppy game out of them, turned the ball over 5 times. So there's some things that I think it's a talented group. I do. I think they may be a year away, Jason. I'm not real sure. I mean, there's some players there that are pretty talented. I think they just got to mature and continue to progress. On the Marian side, nothing real flashy, Jason. I mean, you think about Marian football, and again, Coach Karras has come back for his second stint here at Marian. He started the program. He's back. Kind of inherited everything that he has at this point because he came in kind of late, after the playoff run that Marian had last year. Came in, I think it was like early spring maybe. He didn't have much time before spring ball started. So, yeah. I mean, the recruiting was kind of, interesting. They had some players leave, I know, for the transfer portal. There's not a lot of flash with Marian, but very, very efficient, well coached. I thought he created a lot of turnovers on defense, did a great job. Shout out to Justin Robinson, guy I recruited and brought into St. Francis to play. He's now the defensive coordinator at Marian, playing against his old squad. Did a great job. I thought they were very, very efficient on defense. And then Marian didn't make mistakes. They had a huge drive right before the half. So St. Francis was marching, got into that red zone. It wasn't quite inside the red zone of the 20, but I think with a turnover on downs was like, 27-yard line, something like that. Marian gets the ball back in less than 2 minutes, goes down and puts a score in. That made the score. I think it was because it's 21-7.5. So again, you're 14-7. If St. Francis can keep it that score before half, you like your chances. And really, the air just got let out of the balloon with that last second score right in right before half that Marian had. Just completely deflated St. Francis. It was tough at halftime. Coach staff getting those guys back after that type of score happens before the half. And just kind of more of the same. I think, St. Francis kind of wore down quite a bit. Marian had 2 100-yard rushers. They're very efficient in the running game. Again, not a lot of flash, just well coached and well executed, both sides of the ball. That's what Marian did.
Yeah, Keegan LaBelle over 100 yards again. He got over 100 last week against Concordia. A nice little running back for Marian, who's been there. And then, of course, their quarterback, Zach Bundelow. He is a guy that is efficient. Just doesn't, like you said. The thing about Marian is you look at their entire season, and there's nothing about it that just says, oh, wow, this is a sexy team. Look at them putting 70 up here and beating this team 63. They just go out. They play hard football every week. They get wins. There's nothing that makes that. If anything, it maybe makes you underestimate them. If you watch them on film or watch them in person, you might go, well, they're a good team, but God, they're beatable here and there. And guess what? Every week they find a way to win.
You're absolutely right. I mean, like I mentioned, there's not a lot of flash there. The LaBelle kid, I'm just going to tell you right now, he's not impressive looking physically. He's just not. He's a heck of a ball player, though. He really is. He runs extremely hard. I mean, he gives everything he has. He's got deceptive speed. But just looking at him doesn't look like a Marian running back to those that have played against him since their beginning. But he's kind of like the epitome of their team. Not a lot of flash, but very efficient, play extremely hard, play physical, and they're very well coached. I'm very, very impressed with their overall approach yesterday and the way they executed. Again, they made very few mistakes. Very few mistakes. The one they made was a turnover backed up, and that was really the only mistake that they committed all day. Very, very efficient and forced a lot of turnovers.
We move on to what was yet another upset in the Frontier Conference. Number 16, Montana Tech, going down to Rocky Mountain. Now, this was a game that I think some people had on their radar for. You got to watch out for that game. But overwhelmingly, most people are thinking Montana Tech, they're going to keep things rolling. This will be a game that they'll get the victory in. And very early on, it looked that way, Pat. I was able to watch this game a little bit online and then rewatch some of it today. Montana Tech up early in this game. They got up 21-14 there in the second quarter, and then they had a turnover on the short field. I believe it was like the 24, 25-yard line. They turned the ball over to Rocky Mountain. And I tell you what, this quarterback for Rocky, Graydon Buell, threw for 265 yards in this game, had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, ran for 135 yards. So just right there, if you bullet point it, you knocked off a top 25 team. You threw for 265, no interceptions, 3 touchdowns. You ran for 135 and a touchdown. I'm going to go ahead out on a limb here and move out there a little bit and say this kid's probably going to be the NAIA Player of the Week this week. I mean, huge victory for the Battling Bears.
I'd say here, Peters, yeah. I mean, those two guys. What a culture Rocky has of throwing the football. I mean, just the history of quarterback play. They've done a great job there. They really have. And it's good to see them back and competing at a high level. And we talked about, the Frontier League and the parity that is there. And you see an upset like this. It's not really shocking when you think about it because all these games are tight, Jason. You don't see the teams that are, ranked playing non-ranked team within the league. They're still tight football games. It's still, extremely well coached and played. It's great to see it. It's a tremendous conference. There's no doubt about it. And again, prime example here of the parity and the type of football they're playing in the league. No doubt.
Yeah. Buell had a great week on the other side. If you take the first 2 quarters for Montana Tech, they looked, I thought, how Montana Tech should have looked. They were running the football pretty efficiently, but in the second half, they really struggled in the third quarter. I don't think they got across the 50-yard line until the start of the fourth quarter. And even then, they were struggling to move the football. So Montana Tech hits a little hiccup in this game, and they ultimately end up getting dropped by Rocky Mountain. That's going to hurt their postseason possibilities, but it'll be interesting to see how the next couple weeks play out, for the Ore Diggers. A game that also shocked me, and I don't know how much you were able to pay attention to this one, Pat, because you've had a lot of things going on this weekend. Morningside pulling one out against Jamestown. Jamestown, 2-6 now. They were 2-5 coming into this game. They threw for 382 yards, and in the fourth quarter led 29-24. I mean, that's a heck of an effort on the road for the Jimmies to really threaten Morningside.
Yeah, we're kind of talking about is Northwestern looking ahead to Morningside playing Dordt. Well, they did. They played very, very well, won by a few scores. Do you wonder now if Morningside, it's a team that they've had a lot of success against? I mean, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Jason, blowouts for years with James. I think last year especially was really, 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 lopsided. So, again, it's human nature. You're playing, the game that matters within your league, week ahead, and you get 380 dropped on you throwing the football. I mean, that's scary. The good thing is for Morningside, we know that staff. We know how great they are, the type of group that they have there. It's probably the best thing that could happen to Morningside, to be honest with you, to have maybe an eye-opening experience, know where maybe some holes there they've got to work on, some deficiencies that have to be addressed. And I would expect it's an exciting time we're talking about here in a few minutes, the big game coming up next week. But I think it's something maybe the Morningside guys, and if you ask Coach Ryan the same thing, that he would say, this is something that needed maybe to open our eyes a little bit and pay attention to some things that we've got to work on and get ready for this big Northwestern game.
Yeah, and probably the biggest question mark right now for Morningside is quarterback play. Cash Parker, he's in early in this game, goes 11 for 17, 106 yards, throws a couple interceptions. They actually had another quarterback in for a while and then ended the game with Lennox Brown, at quarterback. And Brown, as you can see, 9 for 10 throwing, 97 yards, got a touchdown, ran the ball 13 times for 130 yards. Lennox Brown is a phenomenal athlete for Morningside. And I got to thinking about this today as I was kind of breaking down the stats. I'm like, this kind of reminds me, like when Morningside has an issue at the quarterback position and it's not playing all that well, they get Lennox Brown back in there to finish out the game. Happened against Benedictine, happened in this game. And I was trying to think back in NAI history, like what does this remind me of? And it took me all the way back into the early 2000s. Again, Wayback Machine, old guys doing a podcast. It took me into the Wayback Machine and reminded me of Patrick Creighton for Northwest Oklahoma State. They tried to have him at wide receiver, and he played a lot of games at wide receiver, but there were the occasional time where it's like, we got to get something done at quarterback. They put him behind center, they put him in the gun, and he was able to pull out victories for him. So that will be, I think, the biggest question mark coming into this game on Saturday when they take on the number one team in the country, Northwestern. What's going to happen at quarterback, and can they get any consistency out of that quarterback play this week?
It's an element that's difficult to prepare for. I mean, obviously the dual threat quarterback, we've all seen it. It's evolved since we've been involved in the sport, Jason. We'll say 25, 30 years of us watching the sport. Dual threat quarterbacks are commonplace now, even at the NFL level. There's no more Bernie Kosars and Elvis Gerbacks that were statues, or even Dan Marino's back in the day. People are mobile; they can move. So it's interesting to see that Morningside, who really has never really had that dual threat type guy. Really, I mean, it's more they put a lot on the guy's plate. He's got to be very efficient with the system that they run there. It's very complex in the way they design formations and pass concepts. You got to be able to execute at a high level of that offense. But now having a dual threat guy, it's kind of interesting to see. Is it something they're going to play both and have a certain package of things for Brown? It's going to be really interesting next Saturday how they're going to approach things from an offensive standpoint.
We'll break that game down a little bit more. Obviously, we mentioned this upset earlier, Siena Heights getting a 24-21 upset over Concordia. This was a game Siena got up early, and they just stayed up on Concordia the entire game. Elijah Taylor throwing for 213 yards, did have the 2 interceptions, had a running back in Lepresto over 100 yards with 111 in the score. Concordia, a couple interceptions, a couple issues there. And really the difference in this game, a defensive or an offensive turnover resulting in a defensive touchdown as Shamar Askin went 40 yards with an interception return for a touchdown. Really, that was the difference in this game.
I mentioned before earlier, Siena Heights, tremendous defense. That's their culture. If the offense can be efficient, put some scores in, like they did early in this game, you see the end result. The history of Siena Heights' program, there's never been a year they've been poor on defense. They're tremendous. Unbelievable defenders on the perimeter. They've got great recruiting base there in the Metro Detroit area of unbelievable athletes on the perimeter. We have always struggled. When I was coaching, struggled with that group. They're always big in the middle, defend the run well, and rely on their perimeter guys to match up one-on-one, and they win battles the majority of the time. So it's good to see Siena Heights, get some offense going, get some early scores, get a lead, and play behind that strong defense, and that's the end result of the game. And having a defensive touchdown as well, really, really helping things. So I've always had the utmost respect for that program, and Siena Heights, especially on defense. That's a huge, huge win for them. That's a rivalry game. I think it's been a handful of years since they've defeated Concordia. I'd say it's at least 5 or 6 off the top of my head. So that is a big, big win for that program. The recruiting base, they're in the backyard of these schools are very, very close to one another. So that's a big, big win for Siena Heights.
And Siena Heights, one of the sneaky teams at the end of the year. We might see them at 6-4, 7-3, and go, how'd they end out at that? Well, you get a win like this, you beat all the other teams that you're supposed to, and Siena Heights getting things set up real nice for the future. Onward, number one team in the country, Northwestern against Dort, top 25 matchup, has us thinking, upset maybe. Maybe this is the year for the Defenders. Defenders earlier this year tripped up to Midland. Maybe this is the time that they pull it. No, didn't happen. Sorry about that, kids. 35-14. Northwestern really dominating this game. I watched a good portion of it. Jalen Gramstead, we talked about it, dual threat quarterback. This kid had 161 through the air, ran for 64. I mean, he is really the machine. He is the muster that keeps the Red Raiders going on offense.
Yeah, setting up a huge, huge game next week. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Again, they're hitting all cylinders, Northwestern, more of the same of what we've seen the last few years from them. Really, really excited to see, Morningside, coming off of an interesting, come from behind win against their rival in the biggest game of the year. It's going to be really fun. Yeah,
we'll talk more about Northwestern and obviously Morningside in a little bit because it is a huge, huge football game. But that gets us through the games that we're recapping for this week, Pat. I It's that time of year in NAIA football where I just get excited because you could really start peeking ahead at the postseason to, start getting the brain turning a little bit, start thinking about, who some of those postseason matchups might be, look ahead a little bit to say, oh, this game here, that all of a sudden beginning of the year, I didn't think that was going to be a big game. Now it is. It's a fantastic time of year for NAIA football.
It's really the best. And so many things are yet to unfold. These next 2 weeks are absolutely huge to see how things shake out. So it'll be a lot of fun preview this week for sure for next week.
Absolutely. We'll get to those games in here a little bit. Our episode 0, Pat, I go back to how we did things last week and truly, and I've said this online to a lot of people, that episode came out of nowhere. We were supposed to basically see if this was going to work. I hit record, said, let's just see what we do. And it turned out average. And I think if guys like you and I can be average, like that's entertaining for us at least, isn't it?
Well, that's why I've been my whole life, Jay, is average. Intelligence looks below average it looks for sure. It's one of those things. And, we're in that age where podcasts are fun. I like listening to different things, not just sports. And I like to be entertained and I like personalities. And I know the guy on the other line here, this guy, Jason Dannelly, is a personality. We've had numerous, hilarious conversations and storytelling. We both got that Irish thing going on. So we're just inherently have to, be great storytellers and have a good time. So that's us for sure. So it's fun. It's fun. And, we love NAIA football. We've got a lot of experience in it. Even though you're getting back into it. I'm out of it technically, but still, keeping a close eye on things. But yeah, absolutely. It's entertainment.
Well,
it's fun.
And here's the thing. When I started covering NAIA football 20 odd years ago, I was just removed as a player. So I was still in on schemes and breaking things down and honestly really, understood the back end ins and outs of football. I'd be watching games, go, okay, 3-4 outside linebackers going to do this. We're going to drop into this coverage. And as my time, progressed covering it, I became more of the media guy and realized what was important to do, like this end of it. Like can I look at a defense and figure out a little bit what's going on these days? Yeah, for sure. Cause I'm an ex-football guy, but that's why I wanted to have you on, because I can point to a team and go, okay, what's that they're doing there? And you'll be like, well, Jason, that's blah, 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 blah. You're an idiot. And I'm like, yeah, that's why you're here, to help me.
Well, this is my second season out, Jason. I'm seeing new things all the time. And the thing I'm seeing a little bit more of is really the defense is not getting so crazy. I mean, there for a while, I swear to you, as preparing on third down, it was like a whole nother defense we're seeing. We're seeing people maybe not try to outthink themselves so much. We're still seeing sub packages and unique blitz schemes and things like that. I'm just seeing really sound defensive play. I think what I've seen so far in the NAIA, the time we've looked at this year, I'm seeing pretty good defensive teams. Like these are tight football games because these offenses are so complex, the things they're doing, and run pass option is a whole new thing. Run pass option really, Jason's like cheating. It really is. I mean, you have a run play called. Okay, your offensive line is blocking the run play. Okay, so what's it look like to the defense? Well, it's a run play. So I'm a linebacker. I'm filling my responsibility. I'm filling my gap. Oh yeah, then the quarterback pulls it and throws a slant in behind me. I mean, it's like cheating. Nick Saban's been fighting it for years and years, how, linemen are getting downfield and engaging linebackers and the ball's thrown. So that's really, really difficult to defend. Why you're seeing, some more man-to-man stuff and things like that, try to defend those RPOs. But Carroll ran them really, really well yesterday. Marian's a big RPO team. There's a lot of those things that are going on that have evolved in the last handful of years. Heck, you see Pat Mahomes doing it all the time for the Kansas City Chiefs, the run pass options. It's really challenging. So the game has evolved, certainly, no doubt.
So from when you started as an offensive coordinator till 2 years ago when you had stopped, and then in the 2 years since, I feel like, and again, maybe I'm just an idiot with a microphone, which I've been accused of from time to time, but I feel like 20 years ago, 4-3. We saw just a lot of 4-3. That's what guys are doing, 4-3 cover 2. And then, a little bit 3-4. And that was the defenses. Everybody was at that. Some people got a little crazy. Well, how have you seen that evolve through the years? And what do you kind of feel like is like everybody's running some semblance of this style of defense in the NAIA?
Well, the big thing is whether you're odd front, 3-4, or you're even front. I mean, you got to stop the run first. You got to cover your tail, covering gaps up and defending the run. And really, you get creative in the back end of covering it all up. And then the multiplicity on third downs, the exotic stuff, the sub package where you're going to bring in. Maybe you're an even front team, but on third down and long, you're going to come out and dime package with all the DBs, 3-4 alignment with all the bells and whistles and personnel changes. For me, at least, like a team like Concordia, Michigan, I will tell you right now, as advanced of a third down defense as you'll ever see. I mean, it's insane. Like, we spent so much time just, where are they all coming from? They're bringing the safety here. Okay, here comes this guy. Here's a combination blitz out of this look. It was all different every single week. I mean, they had a lot of fun scheming things up. Marian over the years did the same thing. And then you have like teams like Carroll College back in the day when Coach Van Diest was there. They're pretty basic, pretty simple. And they were just going to beat you, one-on-one. Their scheme was going to be sound, and you had to win one-on-one battles. So it's multiplicity, I think, on defense. I mean, really, you got to stop the run first, but then you can get really creative with everything else. But they want to make offensive guys prepare and spend hours and hours and hours in the office. And guess what they did? Because I was doing it. And those guys are good, man. I'd say at this level, I mean, there's a lot of great coaches that scheme things up very, very well to make things challenging. But then from the offensive side, you went from, under center. I mean, when you were playing, it was under center. I mean, you probably had a little bit of gun maybe in, the time that I was in school. I mean, mostly under center. You had your 2 tight end packages, 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, 1 back. It was inside, outside zone, play action, kind of Peyton Manning stuff of the 90s. What the Colts were doing, very similar to that. Some 2-back teams, obviously, with a fullback. And what the heck's a fullback? Nobody knows what that is anymore. And then it's evolved into, spread offenses where it's 10 personnel, 4 wides, 1 back, and everybody's chucking it around the yard. And it's kind of come back a little bit where these run game schemes are more towards what was maybe in the early 2000s, just spread out in the gun. Like you're watching College of Idaho yesterday. I mean, they're running gap schemes. They're running power. They're running some design quarterback runs. But it's really the old basic power schemes from under center, just now in the gun. And heck, the quarterback's running, they give it to the tailback, whomever. But those schemes are still the same, blocking schemes of 25 years ago, just presented a different way. That's what I'm seeing. And then you incorporate, hey, I'm running these run plays. I'm going to read that one linebacker. Okay, he's playing the run. We'll throw it out to him, the RPO game. That just, that's like cheating to me. That's like, I see why the defensive guys lose their minds on that. But, yeah. And I'll tell you this, watching these games, Jason, since we started doing this, I am really impressed with the coaching at this level. I mean, I've been out 2 years now. Obviously, I was in it for a long, long time. I thought it's always been pretty solid. I think it's really, really good right now. Very, very impressed with Carroll and College of Idaho. That was a really well-coached game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. I think one of the big things, with coaching is technology has come along to help coaches, and everybody is kind of on an equal playing field. Now you can get games digitally. They're kind of pre-cut up. Going through film is not the bear that it used to be. You didn't have to have a person on staff spending 12 hours driving to pick up 3 VHS tapes and bring them all the way back. Sorry about that, Pat. Like, that's just
It was so funny. So we're in our early 40s, almost mid 40s. Yeah. I have actually coached a college football game in this level where we had to drive and exchange film in playoff games. So you get the pairings. It's the same deal it was a handful of years ago, as it is now. You get the pairings on Sunday afternoon, early evening, whatever it is. And literally you're on the phone with your opponent trying to figure out a meeting point to exchange, it was VHS first, then DVDs. No kidding. Then you're driving back, whatever that distance is, you're driving back. Then you're doing all the film work overnight Sunday. And you start the preparation, whether it's 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. on Sunday into Monday. You have to have a game plan to present pretty darn fast. Like our goal was always Monday late evening. It's nuts. I mean, in our lifetime, we've had to do it. Now it's a click of a button, which is really, really nice. Yeah. So, like you said, there's a heck of an advantage now of getting ahead of things, certainly.
And I think that's the key for this level. Why the coaching is better, because I think there's always been solid coaches in the NAIA, really good coaches in the NAIA, but with staffs being smaller, and then you have to spend all your time doing all these administrative things, you don't get to coach football. And now these guys are getting to coach football more. Now there's other problems that come with it, because now you have to have social media. Now you got to shoot these videos. Now you got to have this little campaign thing going on and do this photo shoot. But it takes less time away from actually coaching football and coaching your guys up than what used to happen, even 10 years ago, 12 years ago. I mean, the technology in NAIA football has helped to bring the entire sport forward. And I think it helps too, everybody kind of getting on some of the same technology platforms so that it's a lot easier to exchange things in formats and making sure that everybody's, getting the same stuff and the same quality.
There's a couple geniuses that worked at your neck of the woods, your home area there in Nebraska, that came up with this concept huddle.
Yep.
These guys are just wizards. And they figured it out. Two video guys that came up with the concept of basically doing all the things that programs have tried to do for years and years with their video breakdown, but on the online format where you can send and exchange film. The recruiting part of it makes it even easier. Those guys were brilliant. And I believe the majority of the NAIA would assume have it. All the high schools in the country have it. And again, it's a click of a button to send video. And I'm not kidding. We'd play Kalen DeBoer's team back in the day. We had to put VHS tapes on a plane to fly to Sioux Falls, and Sioux Falls would fly to Fort Wayne. I'm not joking. VHS tapes. So we had to do back then. Now it's a click of a button. That wasn't that long ago. So it's come, like you said, light years. And I'll throw this out too, Jason. I'm sure every one of these institutions, their coaching situation and the responsibilities of their staff, it's different with every one of them. The things that they have to do. I mean, coaches at this level, believe me, I've been there, wear all kinds of hats, different hats. So like you said, I think having, the technology streamline, the way that it is, where you can focus maybe more on the game, because they still have those other jobs they have to do. But I think now with video, especially, in preparation, be a little bit more accessible. They can take an iPad and take it home, and they can spend time with their family and prepare for the next week's game or watch more film. I know we did video, web meetings all the time with Zoom, be able to use Huddle and show players, scheme. I'm with quarterbacks all the time remotely, just so I could at least see my kids a little bit during the week, my last few years coaching. So like you said, the technology is definitely, like you said, even the playing field. I think you're absolutely right. Because again, every one of those schools, there's a different situation with what they have to deal with their staff. So having, accessibility makes things much easier, certainly.
I think one thing too, and we'll get into the previews here in just a little bit of the 3 top games coming up this week. I think the other thing too that's happened at the NAIA level, and I'm not going to say this carefully, I think a lot of these NAIA schools are finally being honest with themselves about what athletics means to their institution. I think for years and even recently, there's schools that really put themselves up on a pedestal academically, and that's great. They probably have great academic programs, but if they don't allow the coaches and the people in the athletic department the opportunity to be successful, you're not going to be able to boost your enrollment at your school through some of your traditional students showing up there, and then also be able to bolster your enrollment through athletics. I think schools have gotten more honest with themselves in the last couple of years and saying, hey, we need to make sure that this football team, this volleyball team, this basketball team, that those student athletes have a good experience and they want to stick around here, and that we don't just cattle call them in every year and say, well, men's basketball team, you got to have 30 recruits this year, and we're probably going to lose 18 of them by next year, and bring in another 30 next year because we got to keep enrollment up. I think schools are being more honest with themselves and allowing those programs to be successful and making sure they've got the staff and the resources to keep those kids around. And we're seeing more and more of that at the NAIA level.
Couldn't agree more. I think, knowing your identity as an institution is a huge thing. It really is. And I'm completely on board. The other thing too is the funding part. This is a scholarship affiliation. Again, if there's folks there that are, may not understand the whole background of what the NAIA is, it's a scholarship, athletic programs, and the way that you have to utilize resources and fund those scholarships is crucial for your success. You can be the best football coach in the world, but if you're recruiting in a different level as your competition down the road, that's tough to overcome. So you have to have that even playing field and try to make things as, from a financial commitment standpoint to investing in your talent as best possible. You just have to play at the highest level, in the NAIA.
We could spend an entire episode, but we need to move on so we can get through these games. But I'm saying, like, 24 scholarships in the NAIA, to the layperson, it's like, oh, you get 24 scholarships. Well, it's half scholarships. It's partial counters because of academics. It's non-counters because of 4.0 GPAs. There is a whole metric that goes into it that I think is well beyond what some people understand, and how some schools really understand that and are able to successfully scholarship, and how some just look at a number that's out there and think that that's all that's available for them. So, but again, we could spend an entire episode on scholarshiping in the NAIA, and 4 people, all of them athletic directors, would enjoy that podcast. All right. Featured game number 1 of the week. This is in the Heart Conference, and actually I did not even plan this. So the Heart Conference around Kansas City, I got my Kansas City Royals glass I'm drinking out of here tonight. Benedictine in Atchison, Kansas. You've got Baker down in Baldwin City, Kansas. This has been a rivalry in the Heart for years and years and years. Some of the best coaches in the NAIA have coached in this one, and Larry Wilcox, who used to be at Benedictine, and Baker has had some tremendous coaches, through
Mike
the
Grossner.
years.
Yeah.
Mike Grossner. I'm trying to remember the guy that was there when McCarthy was the coach, and now it's I see his name, but I can't think of it. I'm an idiot. We'll move on. This game, so it's number 18 versus a team that's currently receiving votes. Baker will probably get into the top 25 this week. The reason this is a big game is these are the top 2 teams in their half of the Heart. So the winner of this game is in the driver's seat going into the NAIA Championship Series.
Like you said, Jason, this is a rivalry game forever. I mean, it's been really, really good. In my experience, I've played both of these teams in playoffs, national championship. We played Baker in a handful of years ago. So I've seen these 2 teams play on film over the years. And this is always coming down to the wire, 2 well-coached teams. This means a lot for these 2 programs. And seeing Baker, getting back in that top 25 area is outstanding to see, because what a fan base. I mean, it is an important part of that campus. It is a successful football team. It's good to see them back and strong. And we know what Benedictine, what football means there. I mean, it's a culture in that community with the tradition with Coach Wilcox. Has he been out now, 4 or 5 years now? Is it 4 years? I think he's been out, Jay.
It's been minimum
4
3
seasons. Yeah. What a first-class guy, man. He was just awesome. Yeah. And, he and my dad had a good relationship, and just what a cool program, Benedictine there. That's just awesome. This is a big time matchup.
Coach Osborne has continued the tradition there with the Ravens. As you see, they're 6-2 this year. A pretty solid offense, pretty well split between run pass. Both these teams very balanced. They can put up some points on offense. Defense does a pretty good job of limiting what the other team will do. This is a toss-up game for me, Pat. I have a hard time. Like, I look at Baker and I'm like, okay, home game, defense is strong, doesn't quite put up the points. They've been rolling here lately. It's probably Baker because they're at home. But then you go Benedict. This is a tough game for me to pick. I think I'm going to go with what would be considered an upset, because Baker is rated lower than Benedictine right now. I think home team gets the advantage in this one. That's one that I'm going to pick to win. I'm going to go with the Wildcats to get this one.
One thing I can predict, there's going to be points. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I don't know what the over-under is, but you're the D-Gen gambler there, so I don't know. There's going to be points. There's going to be points. I'll take the Ravens. Why not? We'll go against each other there. They're a team with the tradition here as of late. And again, Baker's kind of coming back. It's going to be a great environment, I can tell you that much. Seeing the old Baker film there in Baldwin. Is it Baldwin City? Is that what's called? Baldwin City?
Baldwin
Kansas?
City and
yeah,
Kansas.
they get after, man. The students get after. It's going to be a great environment. So it should be a heck of a football game. Anxious to watch that on Saturday.
Sometime we'll have to do a podcast on the blue bloods of the NAIA, and Baker, I think, would be in there. Same with Benedictine. I mean, you think of the teams that have been around forever. This will be a tremendous game. I'm just looking forward to it, because to me, it's like that good old fashioned NAIA football matchup.
No doubt. The epitome of the NAIA. Has Baker been around like 100 years playing football or something, Jay? It's something crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been
plus 100 years plus.
It's 100 years plus, because I think they were playing like 1911, 1909, something like that.
The rivals, University of Kansas, I think, for a long time, and I mean they played. Yeah, it's just crazy how long they played.
Baker is one of those schools that you really need to look into the history of, because there's been a lot of things happen at Baker through the years that were big for all of college athletics. Emil Liston, and going back into the Naismith days and guys like that. I mean, a lot of that, the early beginnings of the NAIA, Baker was one of those schools that was really pushing the NAIA forward back in the 1920s and 1930s. So Great game, great blue blood game there. We move on. We go kind of in your territory, slightly south of where you're at. We've got Georgetown taking on Lindsey Wilson. Georgetown gets the home matchup here, number 11 team in the country based off of last week's rating because the coaches poll doesn't come out till Monday and we filmed this on Sunday night, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. Lindsey Wilson, number 8 in the country, 6-1. Their only loss being to Kaiser earlier this year. You know, it was a very tightly contested game. Two very good programs here with the opportunity to set oneself up for a nice little postseason run. Pat, your thoughts?
The Chris Oliver Bowl. So we got
yes.
So Coach Oliver started the program at Lindsey Wilson 10, 12, 13 years ago, something like that. Moved north to Georgetown College. Talk about blue blood. Georgetown College is a blue blood program, without question. Lived there for a long time. My dad was a head football coach there in the 80s and 90s or through the early 90s. So very familiar with that area. Great football programs. Again, when Coach Oliver started Lindsey Wilson, it's in a remote part of Kentucky and has made it into a power. You know, built unbelievable facilities, a tradition there. Great teams that he started, that program with and continued. Look at the offense. Look at the balance on both of these teams. There's going to be great offense. Air raid systems. So the ball's going to be in the air a whole heck of a bunch. You see, the teams in Division I, the USCs and, the former Texas Tech crew and all that, the air raid systems. It's going to be a ton of offense. And both these teams, run that system. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch offensive football, which I love. So we have a fun time flipping back and forth in these NAIA games. You get multiple iPads, the computer all set up for Saturday. But this is going to be a great one. Again, a great stadium there in Georgetown. Should be a great environment. Going to be a heck of a football game. That's a tough one to pick, Jay. I mean, it's the Coach Oliver Bowl. Man, I don't know.
Yeah, my whole mindset when it comes to picking NAIA games, if I'm just looking at it and it's dead down the middle, I always lean towards home team because I feel like home field advantage in the NAIA is something that truly does exist. So I lean towards the Tigers in this one. I think Georgetown at home. I think Georgetown, since I early in the season, maybe Georgetown wasn't quite getting to where they needed to be. They had that loss, to Reinhardt, and they recovered from that. They got the big win against Bethel. I think they've pulled things together a little bit here these last couple weeks. So I do see the Tigers coming out getting the win in this one.
I'm going to agree with you. I think that this is that year. So year 2 for Coach Oliver, really kind of taking that next step. I think he did extremely well. Of course, Coach Cronin left it in such a great place in his retirement. And Coach Oliver came in as the program was in a great place. And again, he's taken it to, I think, the next level, getting back into that national contention, competing for that national championship. And I think you're going to see Georgetown get back to that point here. And this is an opportunity for them to make that point and win this football game against Coach Oliver's former school and make a huge splash. And I see the Tigers coming out on Saturday.
Should be a great one. We look forward to it. We're only featuring 3 games this week, mostly because if we did more, we would be here for 3 hours, and we have lives and families and wives and children that we need to get back to attend to. So one final game to look at here, and it's vaguely important, I think. What's that say? Oh yeah, the number 1 team in the country taking on the number 3 team in the country. Rivalry in the GPAC, a rivalry that Morningside for years and years dominated. Northwestern now in the last couple of years, they've turned the tide. The Red Raiders have had a great season. Obviously, last year winning a national championship, this year being number 1 in the country, and they've continued to improve week over week over week, Pat. So this is a game, again, at home for Northwestern, has me leaning towards the Red Raiders. Nothing against the Mustangs and what they've done this year, but I think the questions at quarterback and what they're going to end up doing there in the backfield, it has my gut saying the Red Raiders in this one.
I think it's great insight because, again, you have this quarterback situation. If there's anything that's kind of, you're not real sure what you're doing at that position. And I think, they've got some talent there, certainly. But that kind of, makes you scratch your head and say, well, no, if they're not real sure, I'm going to lead the other way. And I tend to agree with you. I would never want to count out Coach Ryan and his staff. I have the utmost respect for them. I think they're tremendous in what they do. First and foremost, this is going to be a great game. I mean, this is what you work for and what you play for. This has become a tremendous rivalry the last couple of years. And again, it's only a rivalry if both teams are successful at some point. And obviously this for so long was a Morningside, how many years in a row? I mean, decade or more of victories in a row. And now here comes Northwestern, breaking through, having to beat Morningside to get to that, national champion type level. And here they were just last year. So I'm going to say Red Raiders as well. But man, this may be one of those just classics, down to the wire, 2-minute drill, something along those lines. I see it happen that way, Jay.
And I feel like there's Northwestern fans that are watching this saying, don't pick us. Yeah. We don't need to give any fuel to that Morningside fire. You're already on this podcast, Jason. You've already said, oh, they have quarterback issues. Now you're picking against them. This is going to go up on a bulletin board. And guess what? Morningside's going to come in super motivated as if they didn't need it in this game to start. So I'm going to pick the Red Raiders. Sorry to my friends from the Tulip Festival in Orange City, Iowa for the pick. But my gut just leans that direction. You ever been to the Tulip Festival?
That's like one of the few places in like the only university in Iowa that we didn't play there. We've played Northwestern at home. Never been to the far Northwest. We've been to Sioux City. One thing that kind of strikes me in this matchup is Morningside giving the passing yards up that they did last week, which you've got to get that tightened up. And I don't know if it's a personnel situation, it was blown coverages. You got to look at all those different things. But you certainly better get it fixed really quick going against the Red Raiders. And they throw the football exceptionally well. Again, a dual threat quarterback who throws as well as he runs it. Got to get some things ironed out. And I would expect that Morningside will be prepared to the highest level for this football game and get some things fixed. And, maybe it's one of those things they had to see and fix to see some of the holes. And I have confidence in that staff to do so.
I just look at the biggest difference from Northwestern 5 years ago, 10 years ago to today. They've always had this identity and the ability to run the football. Northwestern for years, back to Dave Perigo, who was the NAIA's all-time leading rusher at one time, to their running backs they had through the early 2000s, late 2000s, 2015. They always were a good run football team, but they could never quite figure it out throwing the football. And now you've got this Jalen Gramstead in here, who's a good dual threat quarterback. He can sling it, he can run it, and I think that causes a lot of problems for teams out there. So you mentioned Morningside. Well, they need to tighten things up on the pass. That may play into one of the Red Raiders' biggest strengths. I don't know. Obviously, Saturday the game will have to get here, but I do lean towards Northwestern, obviously winning this football game. But Morningside, man, Steve Ryan is a tricky coach, man. Like, I love that guy. I love how he coaches. He's such a good coach. There's part of me that thinks he knows what he's wanted to do at the quarterback position and with this offense all year long. And he just didn't want to show anyone because he knew he could beat everybody else on his schedule, not showing it, and he needed that advantage over Northwestern. Part of me thinks that. It might not be true, but part of me thinks, like, Steve's been around long enough, man. He's a good enough coach. He could pull it off. If anybody could pull it off in the NAIA, it could be him.
I would agree with you, no doubt. And that league's so cool. I mean, even back when you played, Jay, you have the Sioux Falls Morningside. Morningside came back into the NAIA. That was the matchup late in the season. Remember, it was always late. It was always snow somewhere in Sioux Falls or Sioux City. That was the matchup for years and years. Sioux Falls leaves, then it becomes the Northwestern game. Morningside ran roughshod for years. Then they get Northwestern in competing, and that's being that rivalry rekindled, and it's awesome to see. And I think this is obviously the biggest game of the year up to this point to the NAIA or with the NAIA, and going to be awesome. It's going to be scoring. I mean, this week you see the matchups that we have. I mean, these teams are averaging 40+ points a game. I mean, it's going to be high flying offense. Not to discredit, the triple option teams we've been covering the last couple of weeks, but this is the antithesis of that this week. The ball's going to be spread around and thrown around quite a bit this week with these big matchups. And get the smart TV rolling, the iPads, the computer, get as many games as you can on screen and take a peek. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm going to love it. It's going to be awesome, Pat. We're getting close to probably that time that we should wrap things up officially for episode 1. Episode 0 doesn't count. I'm calling this our first actual episode of NAIA Football with Dannelly and Donley. We had a little intro thing there that went off. We had screens and graphics. I actually found some lights to put on me here, so it went well, buddy. I
think so too. I got the light to show off my red. I got burned yesterday. Doesn't take much for me. I'm pasty. But yeah, the forecast. Oh, it's 65 and overcast. It was 74 and sunny in Indianapolis yesterday, so I got roasted. So my wife
just shredding your white-skinned face.
100%.
All of your whiteness just burning and peeling.
And I don't tan. It's just it's pale red, or burn, peel, and then back to square one. So yeah, my wife's giving me crap already for not wearing sunscreen. So
it's late October. Like
100%.
We're
in the Midwest, man. I'm not in Florida. I mean, this is this is time where I put the 100 SPF away.
Well, next week's show is going to be interesting. Pat and I have to discuss some things before we figure out exactly how we're going to do it. I will actually not be sitting in this seat long before I committed to doing an NAIA football podcast on Sunday. And actually booked a trip and some time to be in Arizona with a buddy of mine. So I've got to go to Arizona next weekend. I'll have an opportunity to watch some football next week. But then we're going to go to the Cardinals game on Sunday. And that could kind of mess with when we record this or when we go live or what we do, but we'll do something. We might be slightly delayed. It might not come out on Sunday next week. So nothing like starting a program, Pat, and then immediately changing the time in which people can watch it.
That's the beauty of this, though. I mean, it's essentially on demand, right? You can go find it anytime you want. That's how most of us, I think, listen to podcasts, watch webcasts, whatever it may be. That's the beauty of it. It's on demand, and you can find us out there on social, right? We've got some things out there. You're great social media and your website and things of that nature. So, it's out there. You can find it.
Yeah.
Wherever you get your podcast. You can find your podcast all over the place. So
I'll wrap it up with one question for you, non-football related. You mentioned like listening to podcasts and non-football podcasts. What is your non-sports podcast that you find yourself listening to the most?
I do some stuff like I love murder mystery stuff. It's kind of silly. I'm a big history guy. So, if you give me anything World War II, I'm on board. I'm a huge music guy. I have the musical taste of a 70-year-old man. So I listen to stuff, history of the Beatles or, the Stones or whoever. Yeah, I'm one of those guys. But I like a lot of different things. I like to cook. So I listen to podcasts regarding, cuisine and culture and things of that nature. So, I like a lot of different things. It's not a meathead football coach, buddy. I try to get out there and be eclectic in the things that I'm into, and always into new things.
I'm a comedy guy, so I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts. Two Bears, One Cave. Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer probably is my one go-to week over week. Love those guys. So
Bert Kreischer was in Fort Wayne like last year, and there's still stories of him like just ransacking the city. Going nuts. He's out all night. There's people hanging out with him. I've heard stories. I was not there, but yeah, he's one of those guys. I think he goes kind of crazy in every city he goes into. So kind of that guy, he's like a Viking, just takes over, pillages.
He definitely goes hard. That is for sure.
He goes hard.
All right, buddy. Well, this has been fun. I appreciate you coming on, doing the program again. Any last thoughts before we sign off here?
No, man. Enjoy Arizona. That sounds awesome. I'm jealous. Of course, my skin probably couldn't handle going to Arizona this next week. But, enjoy yourself. Much deserved, and you work hard, man. You're slinging that farm equipment, man. That's a tough gig. So you need a little vacation. You got to get a little R&R, and you got a newborn at home too, man. That's got to be. It's got to wear you out a little bit. I've been there. Of course, you're way too old to have a kid that young. No offense.
Fortunately, I'm at the age now where sleep. Like I already was the guy going to bed at 9 o'clock at night and waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So the newborn has not altered that for me yet. In fact, I could probably get more sleep if I slept at the same times that she was sleeping. So that's been awesome. But that's
so happy for you in that regard. But I don't want to switch places with you in that regard at all. I did that in my early 30s with the little one. So I'm happy my kids are 10 and 8 now. So but good luck with all that.
We'll be back next week with more NAIA football with Dannelly and Donley. He is Pat Donnelly. I'm Jason Dannelly. Thanks for checking out NAIA football. We'll see you next week, everyone.